Welcome to the penultimate session on the anatomy of a movement. In this session, we're going to talk about the multiplication of movements and different issues and factors in that. We'll do this in at least 3 sessions, where we'll begin in this session talking about the differentiation between causes and movements. And we'll also begin to identify some key issues in regards to the multiplication of movements. In the next session, we'll talk about different observations that have been made about movements, Christian movements around the world today. These church planting movements and disciple-making movements, as sometimes they're referred to, have specific characteristics, and we want to be sure that we understand those and their implication for a movement. And then our final session will be focusing on the actions of a leader that will inspire multiplication, if you will. And so we'll talk about some of those by looking at the text of 2 Timothy. But for now, let's get started and talk just a little bit about the differentiation between causes and movements. This might be a good time, if you haven't already done this, to look back at some of our first sessions in the study of movements when we talked about the life cycle of a movement and the factors that determine the success of a movement. Those are key for us, even in understanding a New Testament movement today and what that would look like in our world. And in those sessions, those early sessions, I began to make the distinction between causes and movements. Causes, I would argue, have life cycles. And this is what we see in Bloomer's life cycle of a movement. This movement that goes from an initial cause or issue that's being focused on. Then it moves to where that issue is being coalesced with leaders and training, and then there's a bureaucratization of the cause, and eventually there's a decline. And so these types of causes have a life cycle, I think, is a better way to describe them than actually being a movement that would see long-term sustainable growth. I described these causes as organically rigid. And that's, you wonder, how can you be organic and also be rigid? Well, I don't know really a better descriptor for causes. Yes, they're organic in the sense that they emerge out of the issues in society, whatever they would be, and certainly today in North America and around the world, we're seeing these causes emerge, in fact, erupt out of issues, social issues that in some cases have been pent up for many, many decades in different societies. And they just erupt. And yet they begin to take form and they become very rigid in the forms that they take. And so I look at these causes as organically rigid. And we can say that to some level about the church as well. When the church begins to organize and institutionalize, what had started organically becomes rigid over time. Causes tend to be this worldly focused. The vision is to change something in this world now. And again, I'm not indicating that these are negative things or bad things, but they're just simply observations about causes. And so a cause wants to see something implemented now in this world. And then finally, causes lead to institutions and oftentimes lead to irrelevance. And we'll see this happen in the various causes that are occurring even in our day and age. That you think of the Black Lives Movement, the defunding police movement, the various other movements, Me Too, Occupy Wall Street, and so on. These causes have had, in some cases, life cycles, and others are in a life cycle currently that eventually will fade away. Either by becoming a part of the mainstream in society or simply becoming irrelevant altogether as they tend to institutionalize. Movements, on the other hand, have a rhythm to them, it appears. They're not in a cycle that has an ending point. But there are certainly ebbs and flows in movements. At times, they're going to be growing and significant. At other times, they'll be solidifying and perhaps even retracting a bit until they rediscover their purpose and continue to grow and propel even further momentum in their vision, their heart, their passion for the movement. They're organically purposeful. They're not going to be bound up by rigid structures necessarily, but they're always going to be somewhat grassroots. These are going to emerge from the deep passions of people that see that change is necessary and want to be instruments of that change. Movements are, rather than being this worldly focused, are otherworldly focused. They see something different. They see a new future, a brighter future. Sometimes that future will be in our lifetimes. At other times, that future is beyond. And as we think about the Christian movement, certainly that is the perspective that helps to sustain the Christian movement over the long term. It has this otherworldly vision that's the declaration of God's glory to all peoples around the world, with the ultimate goal that that mission will one day be complete, and we will then be in the presence of God in the new earth, as the book of Revelation describes. These types of movements lead to cascading more movements. And not different movements, mind you, but more of the same movements as the multiplication occurs. And the vision for this movement is caught by many people in different geographical locations. And this certainly describes Christianity as a movement, as it is spread across the globe. You know, today that we can easily say that Christianity is present on among the majority of ethnic groups today. There still are some that have not had the opportunity to hear the gospel, and we talked about that a couple sessions ago. But Christianity as a movement clearly has demonstrated itself in terms of a rhythm, it being organically purposeful, otherworldly vision, and leading to cascading more movements. And yet at the same time, we see that in our present day and age, that Christianity has taken on increasingly more characteristics as a cause, where it has fallen into this life cycle and we see it declining. And so we hope and we pray that we can rediscover the movement mentality of the original Christians.